Hello and welcome to another episode of Bare Bones Wargaming, a show with no bells, no whistles, no frills, just a man, a camera, and his game. This episode, it's time to talk about the best and the worst, new to me, games of 2020. Now this year, because it was a little bit of a different year for me, I spent a lot of time being interested in reading and studying the American Civil War, which I hadn't done for a while. Spent about 3 months on that. Spent about 4 months on World War I. And I've been spending the last almost 2 months now with Napoleon. So this year I had a total, when I went into the BGG database and looked at all my plays, I had a total of nearly 50 games that were new to me. So, whoa, that's a lot of new games in the course of a year. That's like 4 a month, give or take a little bit, right? Yeah. Anyway, so one thing I do want to say is Black Swan is not included in this. I mentioned to you guys last time I was trying to wait till it got here, but when I look at it and been thinking about some of the rules and strategy and stuff, I need more time. I didn't want to rush things. So that one has been left off. That one will have to compete with the 2021 new to me games. To see if it can get one of the top 10 spots. Alright, so now this time, unlike the last couple of years, I'm actually going to start with the worst side. Because let's face it, 2020 has pretty much sucked royally, for lack of a better way to articulate. So I'm going to start off with the 10 worst side, and then finish on an upbeat note, hoping, of course, that 2021 will be better for all of us down the road. Now, for the worst to me games, I actually only have 6. Okay, I wasn't able to come up with 10. There was a couple that I was on the fence about, but the more I thought about them, the more I was like, you know what? I can't really say it's really all that was that bad for me. It just wasn't my taste. It wasn't my style, and that to me is a different kind of category because it's one of the games was Fields of Despair, and it's a game that I would necessarily, you know, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't recommend to somebody. I would basically say, you know what, this wasn't my style, I didn't care for it, but hey, you might want to check it out anyway because, you know, it's a solid system. I don't feel that way about these 6 games here that are going to be on the worst list. Alright, here we go. Starting off with number 6. The Guns of August by Worthington Games. Let's see, where do I start here? Well, let's just start with the beginning. There's so much potential in this game. I mean, it's very simple, but it had a neat system, and then it's like it was driving along, and then it's like hitting speed bumps, for lack of a better way to put it. One of the biggest things that made this one of the worst games for me this year was the inability to recreate the German advance at the beginning. There's just no way to do it in the amount of time that's given. Now, I don't have any problem with games that, you know, if you can't pull off what if options and alternatives, you know, because maybe that's why it wasn't chosen. But when you can't recreate what was historically done, that to me is a red flag. You should be able to at least recreate what was historically done. You know, I mean, you should, like in a Barbarossa game, you should be able to get to Kiev by the end of the summer, if not sooner, you know. So that was a big problem for me. The other thing was the zones of influence, which was kind of like, for lack of a better way to put it, it was like, you know, you march up and you're like, whoa, and it's like you're bumping into somebody. Excuse me. I just didn't buy that either. From what I read of the books I read this summer, World War I and stuff, I wasn't buying that either. And the map, the map was just, the map was a nightmare. The map was so bad trying to figure out where the hex lines were that I actually took a pen and drew the outline. Because I don't see myself getting rid of this game. That's the worst part of this one. This is one of those games that I want to fix it. And I just don't know exactly how yet. So it's very frustrating in that way. And that's why it made my worst list. Because there's just a lot of opportunity here for a very straightforward, simple, not simplistic, representation of the beginning of the First World War on the Western Front. but these issues just like derailed it and just put it on my worst list for this year. So, Guns of August, number 6, worst game of the year. Number 5. Number 5 actually covers a series of games. These games are part of the Blood Before Richmond series, which is all basically about the 7 Days campaign at the end of June into the 1st of July, 1862, when, of course, McClellan, who was no speedster, that's for sure, basically tried to close in on Richmond with a Peninsular campaign, and Lee drove him back. The problem I had with these games was they were extremely fiddly, I felt. The concept was good. I really thought it was trying to capture the essence of a battle in the American Civil War, but it just was too fiddly. It just kind of got bogged down in too much of the technicality. It just became burdensome to play. You know, it was like, man, you're bumping into stacks, with your fingers and stuff. And even if you're using tweezers, which I tried, because I don't usually use tweezers, it just didn't work out. It really needs a bigger map. The counters are nice and big, but the map is not proportionate to the counters. So when you start to get them, closing in on each other, because, it has fire rules and close combat and everything, charges and stuff, then you really become having an issue. And when you try to look underneath the stack, oh, Lord have mercy, and trying to replace units and stuff, it just, in the end, the reason it made the list, the biggest reason it made the list was it was fiddly, and also because the reward just was not worth the effort. I did not walk away from these games, and I played 3, I think, of the 5. I think there was 5 in this series. I played 3 of the 5, and I just walked away being like, phew, boy, that was not worth my time investment. Or I never want to walk away from a game being like, that was a chore. Like my wife just asked me to do something kind of thing. I don't want to have that feeling when I walk away from a game. So the system itself, again, is interesting, but it just doesn't quite work, in my opinion. It's just for those 2 big reasons. So that's why it ended up being number 5 on my list. Number 4 on my list of worst games for the year is More Aggressive Attitudes, the 1862 Virginia campaign. The biggest problem I had with this is quite frankly, I guess let me start by saying this. This is probably the worst American Civil War operational system I've played. I just think it's awful. I understand it's supposed to be like an intro war game. I get that. It's not really for diehard experienced. In my, the scuttlebutt, what I've heard and things, and I kind of feel that way about it too. But the problem is, it's just bland. When I was playing and moving units around, especially at the beginning when there's hardly anybody on the board, I just was like, I was like, dude. And I guess one of the things too, because this is a fairly recent game that came out in the last couple of years from Hollandspiel. I feel like today games really should, how should I put this, should really kind of incorporate at least a little bit in thinking about their design or extra rules or something about solo players. Because there are a lot of people like me that play solo. And when a game doesn't really have much of a chance to be functional in a solo aspect, that to me is a problem. And that's the way this felt. I was bored. Like the Blood Before Richmond, I was kind of frustrated when I was done playing it. But this, I was just like playing it, and I'm like, okay, wait, let me go. Okay, it's just, that's how I felt. It was just so boring. How boring was this? I would much rather play anyone, and I mean, these to me are extremely dated, quite frankly, but I would rather play any one of the blue and gray games that you can think of than play this again. I would happily play even the blue and gray Antietam game, which I don't even remember if it was called Antietam, which had all those extra rules to simulate McClellan, being afraid of his own shadow kind of thing. I would much rather do that than put myself through playing this again. I ay, 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 ay. I guess we'll finish it that way. Okay, so that's the number 4 worst game of the year. Number 3. Lee's Invincibles. Now, if you remember last year, I did have on my worst game list, I had Hold Fast Eastern Front. I'm getting to the point, I'll be honest here, I'm getting to the point where with Worthington Games, I'm really not interested in buying their stuff anymore unless it's a proven commodity. Like, for example, I've heard that they're going to be making a deluxe version of Malta Besieged, the Victory Point Stage of Siege game, which is awesome. I managed to score a copy a few years back by trading one of my games that was rather rare and unusual too on the secondary market, very sought after kind of thing. But the Lee's Invincibles is just too simple. Again, I'm gonna compare this with another game that is going to make my best list. You know, a simple system doesn't have to be simplistic, but that's the problem with this. It's too simplistic. It really is. Again, it's like there's no effort to do solo play. I mean, there's no effort to take into consideration the solo player, in my opinion. You know, I mean, again, your mileage may vary and stuff. It tries to capture things, you know, what went on and stuff, but I just feel like with the map and the number of spaces there were, like point-to-point stuff, it just wasn't working. It just was too... It was too limiting. It didn't give enough options, in my opinion. That's just, again, this all, I guess you could say, it's just my opinion. But I just, yeah, I tried it a couple of times and I was just like, no. And the thing is, in the last 3 or 4 years, probably more like 3, I've become a bigger block player, but this just isn't doing it. And there's other ones that have missed for me with Worthington Games. So yeah, it's just, I don't see it. I don't. This is another one that is not worth the effort, in my personal opinion. All right. Now we get down to the nitty gritty. Number 2 and number 1. Hold on, everybody. Here's where it gets fun. Okay. Number 2 was extremely frustrating. Because I'm not the only one, I'm sure, that was eagerly awaiting this. Okay? The Nimitz 2nd edition, the upgrade. Yeah! 6 years in the making. Right? Okay. And yet, right out of the gate, if you look at the threads on Board Game Geek, there were issues right away with the search rules and the Japanese order rules. How many issues have there been with this? Let's put it this way. There is a thread talking about what's needed for the 3rd edition to make this thing work. That thread right now, currently, when I checked a little earlier today, is 6 pages long with 129 posts. That's absurd. That, to me, there's no other way to put this. I'm not going to sugarcoat it either. That is an epic fail. Spent 6 years working on a 2nd edition set of rules, and as soon as it comes out, you end up with a thread that is that many pages long discussing what's wrong with the 2nd edition, which did not fix anything with the 1st edition, and it's sad. That's what it is. It really is. The Yamamoto expansion, I got that along with, I mean, I went in whole hog on this, and I probably shouldn't have, like diving into a river that, it looks pretty deep, bam, it's like, oops, no, it was only 2 feet deep, and I just cracked my head open. I mean, seriously, I don't know how else to put this except to say we waited 6 years for this. The Yamamoto expansion, it kind of helped to group the ships and such. That was useful. The islands, people had mixed reaction on that. The individual island combat sheets, having different characteristics for each island, whether you were at, Guadalcanal or whether you were at Midway, etc. It was just so disappointing. So disappointing to think we waited 6 years and already we're right back where we started being like the game still doesn't work, and it's basically fan based. You know, there's one guy extremely dedicated to this, and he and I have exchanged ideas on this. He's actually posted ideas on some of my videos about this earlier. So those of you who are subscribed to my channel, you should not be surprised by this at all. This was just this. Yeah, this should not surprise you at all. This is number 2 on the list. Just a big disappointment. I don't know how else to say it. Yeah, it just feels like it didn't fix things. 6 years. Enough said. Alright, and number 1. Number 1, again, if you watch my channel, this should be no shock to you. Number 1, Lost Creek. This one was extremely disappointing too, because I really enjoyed Pacific Tide when it came out. I really had a good time with that. But in the end, in my opinion, and of course I posted a review video about this after pounding this thing for quite a while, trying to make it work. I mean, I forget, I played 7 times in like 4 days or something. But it's just the system doesn't work on the Eastern Front. It works with the Pacific, but it doesn't work here. It's just really bad history. You know, I mean, the Russians retreat way too easily even when you close in on Leningrad and Moscow. The Germans are able to capture Leningrad and Moscow fairly easily in every single game I played. That's absurd. I mean, Baku being one of the objectives you have to have in 1941 to win the game. To me, that just feels incredibly gamey, basically saying like, hey, you know what? You can get the Leningrad, you can get the Moscow, but we're going to make sure the game keeps going by saying you got to get the Baku. Name me, please, by all means, do challenge me in the comment section. Name me another East Front game that has Baku as an objective for 1941. I challenge you, anybody, please, show me the game that does that besides this one. It doesn't exist. There's no accounting for terrain. There's no way for the Germans to do pincher movements. The units, and I mean, the units don't have individual identification, which I understand. In some games they're not going to, but and I know that bugs some people, so I just mentioned that, you know, just in case you haven't seen this and you know you're watching this video for the first time and everything and stuff. But it's just, and the solo bot doesn't work. I'm sorry, it does not work. If you play it as written, it doesn't work. It breaks down under the strain of the system. You know, it's kind of like the Germans' logistical system invading the Soviet Union. It just breaks down. It was supposed to work. It was supposed to cover, but it doesn't. So, see, I can feel my blood pressure rising on this. You probably noticed even the tone of my voice. So that is definitely the number 1 worst game of the year, Ostkrieg. It's just, yeah, it's maybe that should have been a harbinger for the rest of the year. I don't know, but whew, ay caramba. So just awful. Okay. All right, enough negativity. Let's talk about some positive things. Let's talk about the 10 best to me new games of the year. Now I gotta admit, this was hard. This was hard for me to pare this down to 10, because I think when I was doing best and worst, putting them in columns, out of the 50 games, I think I had about 25 to 30 that were under the best side, and it was tough to pare down. You know, there was a couple that just barely missed making the cut, but yeah, this was a good year in terms for me, in terms of games that I got exposed to for the first time, but also some of these were new releases this year. Let me just take a look at my pile here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and if really 5, 6. 6 of them were released this year. So, you know, in that sense, it kind of was a good year. All right, let's get to it. Number 10. Versailles, 1919. This, of course, was at the tail end of my World War I streak, if you will. I enjoyed this because I like games like this that give you a perspective not only of military conflict, but, you know, the pre-battle and, you know, pre-war, post-war kind of thing. And this definitely did that. I could see where this game would be a lot more fun with folks to negotiate with you know, little double dealings and all that kind of stuff. It's an interesting topic, you know. I mean, it's just, you know, every time I think about this, I think about that political cartoon that was written at the time with the child that was sobbing, and the big four that you see in the picture here. You know, one of them saying, "I hear a child weeping somewhere," and the child had written on the back, you know, the 1940 class or something like that, which was extremely prophetic. You know, it's just amazing. The solo method is, I will say, I can see it's not as engaging as if you play this with 4 players, because, well, first of all, you lose Italy, for one thing. But the other thing is that with the solo method, and this, you know, this is how I see it from the plays I've had, it becomes more of a narrative thing. There's still decisions to make and reactions to make, and, you know, you have the clever mechanic of, you know, you get kicked down to whichever one's the lowest and try to build up, just like the Peloponnesian War that Mark Herman designed. But it does feel more narrative, I guess. There's still tension. There's still all the elements, and I still thoroughly enjoy it that way. But it is a little bit of a different animal. So if you like narrative games, like some people don't, some people do, but if you do like narrative games, this is good. Even from a solo perspective, this was very good. Well, it made my top 10 list for the year. So I do like it. It's just an interesting look at a part of. Sometimes I feel like as wargamers we focus on the military stuff, and sometimes we forget about the diplomacy and geopolitical maneuvering that happens before the shots are fired, and then what happens afterwards. And this, you know, this game really lets you look at that. I mean, I enjoy this game so much. I went on the P500 list and ordered the Congress of Vienna one. That's supposed to come out, hopefully, I think, in 2021. We'll see. So number 10, Versailles, 1919. Number 9. Number 9. Now this is the new edition that just came out from Canvas Temple Publishing just a few months ago, I think, or maybe just even a month ago. I did a video, of course, earlier this year on this game that used the that's One Small Step version, I think is what I had out. So I haven't actually played this one yet, but I mean, it's basically the same rules. The components are a lot nicer. There's a mounted map even, which is totally cool. This game I thought was really good, though, because it's a great strategic game that has a lot of replay value with the Battle of the Atlantic. The other thing I like about it is, and sometimes people complain about lack of decisions and stuff, but here's the thing. It depends on the perspective. You know, when you look at this game, you're looking at this from the perspective of the top, which basically is like, okay, you know what, I give orders. I want to send, you know, 5 subs to the North Atlantic. We got to get those convoys. Or you know, we got intel that says that there might be stuff coming up the coast of Africa. So send 3 subs down there, and then you sit back and wait. You know, you get to decide whether you want to put emphasis on subs or on technology and stuff, and then you kind of have to wait to see what happens. That's what the events are for and stuff. And granted, you know, there's not a ton of decisions to make. There are some. You got to decide which box you want to put things in and stuff. But in the end, that's what it would have been like to have been the head honcho. You know, look at that big map, you know, on the table kind of thing. So I think this game does a good job with that. There's a lot of replay value here, not only from deploying the subs, rolling the dice, but the cards, you know, to resolve the convoy battles, the escorts and aircraft attacks and stuff, and even the fact that you shuffle them after every other turn. There's a lot going on here. So from a strategic perspective of the Battle of the Atlantic, this is an excellent game. I do wish it went a little bit longer, maybe, but you know, but it's good for what it is. It really does put you in that situation, gives you that feel without being incredibly complex. Like, for example, Steel Wolves. You know, Steel Wolves is a good game, but holy moly on the time investment. I used to own that. I used to own the other one too. It was about the U.S. Pacific campaign. I forget the name of it on top of my head, but this is much more manageable and much more playable, in my opinion. So, Atlantic Wolves, number 9 to me this year. Number 8 is the oldest game on either list. Now, like I said, I've been into Napoleonic gaming and reading. I've read quite a few books here in the last couple months. So I've really gone whole hog and really have reached back in the Wayback Machine. So this one I got very recently, but as soon as I played it, I was blown away. despite the fact that it is almost 50 years old. I mean, this game came out the year I was born, which is absurd because this year I turned 48. Whew. Whew. Some days I wake up and think to myself, how'd that happen? But anyway, that's another story for another time. But the game is this one, 1812, the campaign of Napoleon in Russia. Old SPI game, really good, really enjoyable. I really have enjoyed the supply system. I like how it works. I like the depletion. It gives you the impact without having a whole lot of overhead or details or chrome. I love the combat chits because it gives you that little tactical flair with, again, without getting too complicated and stuff. I've only tried the area system. There's a hex version and an area all in one package, which is also very cool. And it's solo wise, in some ways it can be a little tough to play, but between I usually take the battle chits and just randomly determine usually the Russians, because I actively like to play the French, determine which one they use when I pick mine. I always pick mine first, of course, and then I shuffle down the 4 and then use a 4-sided die and stuff. But between that and the forced marches, which you don't know exactly how that's always going to turn out, I think there's enough here to make it very good for solo play, even though it is an oldie but a goodie. It really is. So there's just so much that even after the first couple of plays, I've been thinking to myself, strategies and what could you do, and so I'm looking forward to exploring this game even more. I've only scratched the surface with this one, but it made such an impact so quick that I ended up putting it on the list. So it's my number 8 best game that's new to me this year. Alright, number 7. Part of my World War I run here, Attrition of Souls, which just came out here a couple months ago. It's very interesting. It flows very well. I really do enjoy, how the game oh, wait a minute. Oops. Sorry. I messed up. Oh, no. And I'm not re-recording this whole thing, so forget it. Where did I put it? Oh, no. Where did it go? Oh, it's covered up. Sorry. It wasn't Attrition of Souls. Actually, that's number 7. It's The Devils to Pay. Sorry, a little spoiler there on number 6. This is The Devils to Pay. Tiny Battle Publishing. This one I really enjoyed a lot because it was intricate, but it flowed very well for doing a battle situation. I like how it portrayed the meeting engagement. This covers obviously the first day at Gettysburg, which you probably can tell by the title if you haven't actually played the game yourself. I like how it incorporates the different aspects of American Civil War battle. And it does so that in a way that at first it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get it down pat, then it really kind of clicks together, and it flows together very well too. It might very well be my favorite ACW battle system. I enjoyed playing this when I was doing my American Civil War run. It was very interesting to play. It was a lot of fun. And again, at first, I admit it was a little clunky because it was a little different animal than anything I'd seen before. But in the end, I really did enjoy playing it a lot. And at some point when I get back to the American Civil War, I would definitely pull it out. I even bought Longstreet Attacks based on the strength of my experiences with this. So really enjoyed The Devils to Pay. Excellent game. Number 7. Okay, now y'all know what number 6 is. So let's just get straight to it. Attrition of Souls is number 6. Sorry about that. I covered up The Devils to Pay. Probably because it was such a smaller box. I'm sure you can see that from that. This is a very light strategic game. But it captures the flavor of World War I. Yes, there can be some weird things where you can have a boatload of Austrian troops on the Western Front. Yes, I know that the Austrian siege guns were part of Liege and stuff, but still, you can end up with some things that are a little wonky at times, but I still think the game works very well. It's got a good flow. It's not too heavy. It's not too detailed, but it still gives you a good overview of the First World War and how it kind of went and how each side was the strengths that they had, and the way that, trying to open up, a second front with like the down in Greece and things like that. When should you do that? What about putting pressure, into the Middle East through the Ottoman Empire and all that kind of stuff. The other thing I like about this a lot too is there's a lot of optional rules, including cards and stuff, that when you start to add those things to it, it makes the game even more enjoyable and more interesting, and a little more realistic too as you go along as well. So if you're not looking for something as complicated or takes as long as, say, the lamps are going out, which is supposed to have a second edition printing here pretty early in 2021, I think, then this is a good alternative for you. If you're like one of those gamers who's interested in World War One and kind of wants to play it every once in a while and stuff, this I think is a good alternative to it. I wasn't going to buy this one at first. I remember hearing about it, but then I saw some of the good feedback on Board Game Geek, and I was like, you know what? I was on the fence about it, so let's hop to the other side, and I'm glad I did. It actually worked out quite well. So that is number 6. Sorry about that SNAFU there too. It's just, it's just kind of indicative of the year, right? All right, my number 5 game came from World War Magazine, number 74, the Munich War, basically World War II in 1938. The thing I like the most about this game, and why it made the list, is because it's a very simple system. It's very similar to Rhineland 36, which I believe was in World War Magazine number 25, and it lets you focus on the geopolitical situation and responding to it. There's nothing fancy here with this game system. There's nothing earth-shattering. There's nothing that, if you're an experienced war gamer, you'll have no trouble picking up. But the real beauty of this game is the fact that there are 5 different scenarios with, the starting combatants and the possibility of intervention by other powers, and you kind of go from there. And in some ways it becomes a race, because you don't want the Soviet Union to intervene if you're, fighting the so-called quote-unquote Little Entente that there was and stuff, which is one of the scenarios you can do. Of course, you can also do the scenario, where Britain and France basically are like, okay, you know what, it's time to nut up or shut up kind of thing. So that's why I really enjoyed this. This was a good alternate history game that, again, really lets you focus on the big picture, the geopolitical situation, and trying to figure out how to win and finish things off quickly from one side or the other without getting bogged down in anything. It's just it's just the right balance of those two things, in my opinion. So that's why it came in at number 5. Number 4. Number 4 was a game that was part of the Civil War experience I had this year, so to speak, and that is The Late Unpleasantness from Compass Games, which covers the 2 campaigns of Richmond, the Peninsula Campaign, and the summer of 1862, and then, of course, the Overland Campaign in the spring and summer of 1864. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a very good operational system. I liked having the cards. I liked the point-to-point bit, the strength points for the different units, just having the leaders on the board and not having to have a billion units with them and stuff. I enjoyed that aspect of it. I thought it flowed well. It moved quick. It really lets you have the opportunity to try different strategies and different options and things like that. The one thing I didn't like was that you could kind of overload on certain cards. And then since there wasn't any restriction on cards that you could play, unless specifically you couldn't play like a new card in the middle of a battle, I think that was the only restriction, then you could like pummel your opponent with like an avalanche of certain cards, or even a combination of cards that just, it would be like being on a train and suddenly abracadabra, the tracks just vanished, and you'd be like, dude, what happened? That was the one thing I thought was a drawback to this. How much did I like this game? Well, let me put it to you this way. At one point earlier this year, and I've kind of put it off to the side, and maybe I'll come back to it at some point, I was working on trying to come up with I got pretty close actually to finishing a map that would have covered the area that was covered in the Antietam and the Gettysburg campaign, and then using some of the cards that you find here, and then of course adding some new history cards based on those two campaigns. I was trying to basically make my own version of that. I was that impressed with this system. I'm surprised it hasn't caught on better. I think it's very nice and light. It's not as in depth as the great battles, great campaigns of the American Civil War system. It's a much lighter operational game. It does have a few minor issues, in my opinion, that could be tweaked a little bit and refined, but it really is a fun game. Especially the 1864 one has a lot more options and fun to it than the 1862 one does. I will say that. But overall, I was very, very pleased with this, obviously, because it ended up being number 4 on my 10 best list this year. So if you do like American Civil War and you're looking for a lighter operational game, I would definitely say to look into this, because I think this really kind of fits the bill. It really does a nice job. So, number 4, The Late Unpleasantness. All right, here we go. Down to the big 3. Number 3 is actually a game that covers a topic that I don't mess with much anymore. I'll be honest with you. I rarely get involved with this topic, as you could probably tell from the games I have on both my worst and best lists. And that one is the Foreign Legion Paratroopers from Modern War. That came out earlier this year. Solitaire game, basically tactical. You are the modern French Foreign Legion, and you basically have to respond to different modern problems. Coup d'etat, weapon of mass destruction, insurgency issues, all that kind of stuff. There's a generic set of maps, desert area, urban area, jungle area, and basically, each time you generate a mission, you generate randomly opposing units, and you basically try to react to what's happening, get your people on the ground, figure out the best way to approach things. It can be very difficult at times. It can be extremely challenging, especially depending on what kind of random events happen. So the game definitely keeps you on your toes. It's definitely engaging. It's a great filler game because it plays very quick. And it's extremely tactical, which most of you know I'm not really a big tactical kind of guy. But this game is incredibly engaging from that aspect. The replay value is through the roof. The intensity level is awesome. I just really was impressed with this. I enjoyed this a lot this year. And it's definitely got my 3F rating, and it's definitely going to be one of those games that, when I'm trying to decide between topics or game systems, or, I'm trying to learn a fairly complicated system, but I still want to put something on the table while I'm reading the rulebook, this will definitely be a candidate to do that. It's a lot of fun. It really is. It's very similar to the Crete 1941 system, which was in World War Magazine, I think number 47. And I enjoyed that, which also, the same system is used in Objective Havana. I forget which issue of Modern War that was. But I don't dabble too much in modern warfare stuff, but this one, again, this was another one I was on the fence, decided finally to give it a chance, and I'm glad I did, because it's more fun than a barrel of monkeys. That's the best way to put that. So number 3, the Foreign Legion Paratrooper game. Alright, down to the big 2. The 2 best games that were new to me this year. Number 2, which actually was perfect timing. Like Napoleon said, timing is everything. Number 2 is, speaking of Napoleon, look at that. Napoleon 1807. Now, I also got the 1806 game when I did the Kickstarter, which was a year late, but let's not talk about that particular horror story. I got both of them, and I got to tell you, I really enjoy this system. This is the best operational Napoleonic system I've played. It does a nice job of representing the problems that you had, trying to coordinate and get yourself focused and concentrated for battles and stuff, and the enemy potentially slipping away or not being able to concentrate their forces fast enough. The logistics is built into it between the fatigue element that goes with it. You rest your troops for an entire turn. You can get rid of all your fatigue, like bringing up new supplies and stuff. You'll lose troops if your fatigue gets too high. It's just a wonderfully done system. It has cards that are part of it. The solo replay value is very good because with the cards, you don't know what you're going to pull. Once you say, okay, I'm going to move, this stack over here that has Napoleon and Ney in it, and then you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't get many movement points. Dang it. All right, hold on. Wait a second. It's like Lanez, I think I'm pronouncing his name right. Lanez needs help, so I'll try and do Davu and try to bring him over to reinforce. And, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you can try to surround people and stuff. So this one is a game that impressed me so much that I've been dabbling here in the last couple weeks, trying to figure out a way to make a game with a map, trying to figure out the best way to do it and stuff based on the scale of this game and such. With the 1813 campaign, which one thing I've noticed I'm having trouble with is how much each block represents. The number of men it represents, because of course the armies in 1813 were considerably larger than they were in 1807. So still working on stuff like that and just playing around with it, because the company that made this, the French company Chacos, they've already said that their next project is going to be 1815, which I can understand that. And again, it's not just a redoing of the Battle of Waterloo, it's basically the whole campaign. So this has a tremendous amount of scenarios to it. The 1806 one, you can combine the two games together for one giant, campaign. It's just really well done, and I've come back to it a number of times and have played it, and I've enjoyed playing it every single time. So this definitely is my favorite Napoleonic operational system. Now, I did pick up some more Napoleonic games here in the last couple weeks, so maybe that'll change, maybe it won't, you never know. But right now, this is definitely top dog. This is the king, if you will, for that. So my number 2 game, Napoleon 1807, and also 1806. Although 1807 is a little bit better, and that's why I used it, because it has more scenarios. And the number 1 game this year, this was also new this year, that just came out. It blew me away when I got it and I played it. Verdun 1916 Steel Inferno. Wow. This is definitely the best World War I game I've ever played. I thought it captured the essence of it well. I love how they use the cards to generate the artillery barrages and then the events. How they do the infantry assaults, which is completely mathematical. Which, makes sense because of the way that the fighting was and stuff. The defender had such a big advantage. But the wild card, of course, is the artillery, and then showing how much of an impact the air power had, which I did not realize until I played this game. It just blew me away. The art, which you can see here on the cover, the art completely blew me away too. I even bought Tardy's 2 books about World War One. His graphic novels that he did, because I was so impressed with the art here and stuff, and I'm glad I did. I enjoyed reading both of those, and I'm sure I'll go back and read them again. It was such a good experience. Solo can be a little tricky because you do have cards, and the cards do play a big role, but in some ways it doesn't diminish things, because even though what's in your opponent's hand, although you of course can do the, reveal only so many cards at a time kind of approach and method, which I do sometimes, it still worked out really well. It still was a really good experience. It still was tense. It still was nail-biting. I really didn't have any games that were a blowout, and I played this thing 8 times this year. And every time it was a lot of fun. It was just extremely enjoyable. So it's impressive, because I'm not sure if this was the first game that was done by this company, but if this is indicative of future entries, future products that they're going to make, this was just really, really, really good. So this definitely was top of the heap. This grabbed the number 1 position when it came out at the end of June and never let it go, kind of thing. Not to sound like Billboard, Hot 100 or anything and stuff, but Napoleon 1807 gave it a good run for its money, but to me, this year was it really was Verdun and Napoleon, and then everybody else. It was kind of like that separation, kind of like in college football the last few years. It's really been like Alabama, Clemson, and then kind of everybody else, which, some years more dominant than others, Georgia, Ohio State, and all that. But, yeah, I mean, those were the two big dogs. But Verdun 1916 was a little bit of a bigger dog than Napoleon 1807. Not by much, mind you. But yeah, just a phenomenal game, phenomenal experience. There are little subtle things in the rules, I will say, that you need to be careful with, that I missed the first couple times I played, like the stacking. How you can temporarily overstack with strategic moving, and then, use the tactical moving to for lack of a better way, to articulate, to un-overstack spaces and spread out so that you're within stacking rules by the end of the turn. It's not at the moment, it's at the end of the turn. So that's really opened up a lot of options for me as far as that went with strategy and planning and all. So, number one game of the year, Verdun 1916, Steel Inferno. Alright, now as you can guess, this is probably the last video for me this year. More than likely, it will be the last video of the year. I have been looking at Black Swan. I'm not going to say much right now because I'm still kind of processing and thinking and looking at things, so I'm going to hold back on that. But, I have that game that just showed up. I've got some other ones, and I know my wife's got me some games for Christmas. I think among the games she picked up for me is Banana Wars and Liberty Roads, which I've been looking forward to giving both of those a shot. And, the Revolution game about Poland. Defiant Poland, Poland Defiant. One of those, I guess it's kind of redundant to say Poland Defiant, but anyway. But that too. So, 2021 hopefully will be an interesting year. Right now I'm still running with the Emperor. I've tried to play other games. Even Black Swan I tried to play a little bit, and I'm just like, I can't abandon the Emperor, not yet. So I'll just keep marching with Napoleon until I finally get tired and switch on to another topic at some point in time. There's games coming out this year. The Pacific version of Triumph and Tragedy and Absolute War, done by the designer that did No Retreat, the Russian Front, of the whole No Retreat series. Canvas Temple Publishing is supposed to be coming out with a new deluxe version of the Barbarossa campaign. So, there's a lot of interesting things. Looks like it's coming down the pike in 2021. And, hopefully 2021 will be a better year for everybody overall. So, there you have it. There is my 10 best and my 6 worst, I guess, because I could come up with 10 for the worst list games of 2020. So, I will see y'all in the new year with... I'm guessing Black Swan, but I might do that 1812 Napoleon campaign too in Russia. I'm not sure which yet, but we'll see. And I still have Centrifugal Force, the World at War magazine issue number 75. I still got that. I haven't looked at yet because again, I just haven't been able to leave the Emperor, so to speak. So yeah, I'm sure eventually I'll send him to Elba, but. Well, he might come back if I do that, so I'll send him to St. Helena or whatever. Anyway, so as always, thanks for watching. It's been a good year for Bare Bones Wargaming. At this moment I have 1,130 some subscribers, which I'm humbled by that many people are interested in what I have to say. But, again, I'm a teacher at heart, so I'm just trying to share things to... explain things the best I can. I don't always get it right. Sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I make bad mistakes. But at the same time, I hope that, my enthusiasm and the essence of the game comes across with the videos that I make. So, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Or if you don't celebrate Christmas, a nice holiday season. And I will see you all on the 2021 flip side here in just about 2 weeks. That's right, it's just a week before Christmas. Holy crackers. With a 2 and a 5-year-old, I now got to get on the hump with building some things. It's pretty soon. So, this is Tim Korchnoi from Bare Bones Wargaming saying thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in 2021 with hopefully better days to come, and I don't know, maybe different topics, maybe not. We'll see. I'm sure I'll get around to Black Swan eventually and some of the other games too. So, anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.